11, sweeping changes ahead of one of the most watched elections in history. A Fulton County judge invalidated 7 new rules, including a requirement that your vote be hand counted on election night. Atlanta News First, Blake Devine is live outside of the Fulton County Courthouse. Blake, this takes effect immediately.
Carly, those against these rules had argued that it was too close to an election night and also would cause chaos on election night and could cause some delays. Now, Fulton County Superior Judge Thomas Cox is now telling local elections officials to not follow these rules. Only 20 days out from Election Day, Fulton County Superior Court Judge Thomas Cox has declared 7 new rules passed by the Georgia Election Board as illegal, unconstitutional, and void. Perhaps one rule that caught everyone's attention was the measure requiring ballots to be hand-counted after the polls closed on election night. Other changes included allowing clerks to hold up the certification of election results. Those against these rules voiced that these changes were being made too close to an election and argued that it would have delayed final results.
So the hand counting portion is just absolutely 100% contrary to what the General Assembly has allowed, and this is injecting a significant problem in the election counting process.
The Republican-controlled election board asserted that these rules didn't impact how voters cast their ballots. Georgia Republican Party Chair Josh McCoon sent out this statement tonight, saying in part, quote, "Today's ruling by Judge Cox is entirely wrong-headed and ignores years of rulemaking by the state elections board. The only reason to oppose these rules is to make it easier to cheat." Just yesterday, Judge Robert McBurney blocked the rule requiring hand counting of ballots at every polling place until at least after the upcoming election. The Cobb County Election Office was among those that sued to block the hand count rule. It issued a statement tonight saying, quote, "The Cobb Board of Elections and Registration greatly appreciates the court's thoughtful and expedient consideration of this matter." The Georgia Republican Party plans to appeal tonight's decision. Reporting live in downtown Atlanta, Blake Devine, Atlanta News First.
Thank you, Blake. And Georgia continues to shatter early voting records. According to the Secretary of State's office, in just 2 days, more than 585,000 people have already voted early. Video from earlier today showing a line stretched outside of the Buckhead Library. Our crew spotted similar scenes in Smyrna there. We spoke with Democrats and Republicans, each side saying the large crowds show voters are backing them.
But when we have high turnout, that's always a good sign. And so I think that the state of Georgia is going to deliver for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
We've been talking since June of last year about how important it was for Republicans to change some behavior and not just wait until Election Day, but to get out early.
Preliminary results show a higher percentage of women voters this year compared to last year. Females skewed Democrat, while there were more voters 50+ who tend to skew Republican. Georgia remains in play for both former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. Check out the results of a Quinnipiac University poll. It was just released today. Trump has a 7% edge over Harris right now. That's when 4 people are on the ballot. However, when just 2 on the major party candidates, Harris gains a 1% bump. Now, neither candidate is leaving anything to chance. Vice President Harris will be in Atlanta this Saturday for a rally. Her campaign has not set a time or a location for that. Former President Trump will make his second trip to the state this month, hosting a rally in Duluth at Gas South Arena. Issues other than who is running for president are on your ballot, but don't worry, we're here to help you make sense of it. You can scan the QR code on your screen right now. That will allow you to download the Atlanta News First app. There we have a special election section. It has a link that you can view your sample ballot. It also lets you know where you can vote early or on Election Day.